My name is Aaron Blake, and at 32 years old, I thought I knew exactly what my life was about. Answering emergency calls, staying calm under pressure, being the voice people heard during their worst moments. Then one night, my console lit up with a call that shouldn't have been possible. The caller ID showed my own home number. I live alone. When I answered, a terrified woman screamed a warning that would unravel everything I believed about the system I'd dedicated my life to. What started as a technical glitch became a nightmare that cost people their lives. And before it was over, I'd discover that the institution meant to save people had been turned into something far more sinister. If you want to know how far corruption can reach into the systems we trust most, stay with me. You might want to hit that like button and subscribe, because this story goes deeper than you think. The night started like any other. Tuesday, 11 p.m. shift, the kind of quiet that makes you grateful and suspicious. I'd been a 911 operator for 6 years, long enough to know that silence never lasts. 911, what's your emergency? Lost hikers on the Redwood Trail. I dispatched search and rescue, logged the call, moved on. Domestic noise complaint on Maple Street. Routine. Manageable. My name is Aaron Blake. I'm 32, and for 6 years I've been the voice on the other end of people's worst moments. Around midnight, something changed. A strange tone cut through my headset. A faint hum that made my teeth ache. I glanced at my console. A new call was coming through. The line connecting before I'd even touched anything. That wasn't normal. Our system required manual acceptance for each call. Then I saw the caller ID, my home number. I stared at the screen, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. I lived alone. My landline barely worked. I kept it only because the building required it. I certainly hadn't called 911 from my own apartment while sitting here at the dispatch center. Database glitch, I muttered, but my hand hesitated over the accept button. I pressed it anyway. 911, what's your... A woman's scream tore through my headset, so loud I ripped it away from my ear. The voice was frantic, gasping, terrified. Don't go home tonight. They're waiting. Static swallowed the words. The line went dead. I sat frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The console showed the call had ended. Duration, 11 seconds. I immediately tried calling back, but the line rang endlessly into nothing. You okay? Marcus, my coworker in the next pod, glanced over with concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. I just got a call from my own number, I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. He laughed. Seriously? Probably a spoof. Scammers do that all the time now. Or a crosswire in the system. No, it was... Someone warned me not to go home. Marcus wheeled his chair closer, his expression shifting from amused to curious. Let me see the log. I pulled up, my call history, scrolling to the timestamp. My finger stopped on empty space. The call from 11:52 p.m. simply didn't exist. No record, no entry, nothing between 11:48 and 11:57. That's weird, Marcus admitted, frowning at the screen. Weird. Marcus, that's impossible. Sharon, our night supervisor, appeared behind us, coffee in hand. What's impossible? I explained what happened, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. Sharon listened, then leaned over to examine my screen herself. Probably a loopback, she said after a moment. Rare, but it happens. System routes a test signal wrong, creates an echo. The database sometimes drops them automatically to avoid duplicates. But the voice could have been from another call bleeding through. The digital system's been buggy lately. She squeezed my shoulder. If you're worried, have someone do a welfare check at your place, but I'm sure it's nothing. Nothing. The word felt hollow. As my shift ended at 6 a.m., I sat in my car staring at my phone. Technical glitch, crossed wires, nothing sinister, But I kept hearing that voice, the raw terror. Don't go home tonight. I thought of Mark, my ex-boyfriend, dead 2 years in what police called a break-in. He'd been a cop, sharp and observant. Every call tells you something the surface doesn't, Aaron. You just have to listen. I'd stopped listening after he died. I drove home anyway. My apartment building looked normal in morning light, but my porch light was off. I always left it on. My hand shook slightly as I unlocked the door. Inside, everything seemed fine. The living room was exactly as I'd left it. Dishes in the sink, jacket on the couch, yesterday's mail on the counter. But something felt wrong. The air felt different, disturbed somehow. Then I noticed the window. The living room window was open, just a crack. I never opened that window. It stuck badly, required force. Whiskers, I called out. My cat usually greeted me at the door. Silence. I moved through the apartment, checking each room. Kitchen clear, bathroom clear. When I reached my bedroom, I stopped cold. The door was closed. I never closed my bedroom door. Ever. More than that, it was shut from the inside, the kind of closure that suggested someone had pulled it tight from within. My breath caught. I backed away slowly, pulled out my phone, and dialed my own dispatch center. 911, what's your emergency? This is Aaron Blake, operator 2847. I need units at my address. Possible intruder in my apartment. The response was fast. 2 officers arrived within 8 minutes. I waited outside, arms wrapped around myself despite the mild morning. They swept the apartment room by room, checked closets, looked under beds, inspected the window locks. Place is clear, Officer Daniels reported. No signs of forced entry besides that window, and it could have been open already. You sure you live alone? The question hit me harder than it should have. Yeah, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I'm sure. But as they left and I stood alone in my apartment with all the lights on, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I didn't sleep. I sat watching the door with a kitchen knife until sunrise. When I returned to work that evening, I checked the call logs again. The gap was still there. No call between 11:48 and 11:57. A 9-minute void. Tom Jacobs was our IT lead. Mid-40s, competent, usually friendly. I found him during break. Tom, can I ask you something technical? He looked up, adjusting his glasses. Shoot. Is it possible for our system to receive a call that doesn't get logged? Like, at all? His expression shifted, became guarded. Why do you ask? I told him about the call, leaving out the specifics about my home number and the warning. Just focused on the missing log entry. No, he said firmly. Every call that connects gets logged. Even dropped calls, even wrong numbers. The system's redundant. 3 backup databases. If you got a call, it's in there somewhere. But it's not. Then you didn't get a call. He turned back to his screen, dismissive. Maybe you imagined it. Long shift, you know? I leaned closer. Tom, I've been doing this for 6 years. I know the difference between a real call and fatigue. Look, Aaron, he said, his voice dropping. The system can't be spoofed internally. It's impossible. If you got a call that's not logged, either there's an explanation you're missing or... He trailed off. Or what? Nothing. Just... let it go, okay? But his nervous tone told me everything. He was lying, or at least not telling me the whole truth. That afternoon, I learned I wasn't the only one. Marcus pulled me aside during shift change. Hey, you remember that weird call thing from last night? Sarah just reported something similar. She got a call from a police number that doesn't exist in our system. Totally fake number, but it connected anyway. My stomach dropped. What did the caller say? Nothing. Just static and breathing. Freaked her out. The issue was spreading. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just about me. I was logging a routine traffic accident when my computer screen flickered. A message box appeared, white text on black. Stop digging. You don't want to end up like him. It vanished before I could screenshot it. I checked my message history. Nothing. I asked IT to pull my activity logs. According to the system, I'd received no internal messages all day. Like him? Like who? Mark? That night, I went home and pulled out the box I'd shoved in my closet 2 years ago. Mark's things. His notebooks, his badge, random papers the police had returned to me after the investigation closed. I'd never had the strength to go through them properly. Now I forced myself. Most of it was mundane. Grocery lists, workout schedules, doodles from boring meetings. But then I found a small notebook with a black cover, tucked between larger binders. The pages were filled with Mark's handwriting, but these weren't official notes. They were personal observations. Data anomalies in dispatch system, calls rerouted without operator knowledge. Check with Erin about log gaps. She'd notice. Someone's cleaning the databases. But why? My hands trembled as I turned the pages. Mark had been investigating something involving 911 data before his death. The entries stopped 3 days before the break-in that killed him. A knock on my door made me jump. I looked through the peephole. Detective Laura Finch stood in the hallway, her badge visible on her belt. I opened the door slowly. Detective? Miss Blake, do you have a few minutes? Her voice was calm but serious. I'd like to ask you about some unusual activity associated with your work account. I let her in, my mind racing. Laura Finch was a homicide detective, not cybercrime. She settled onto my couch and pulled out a tablet. You filed a possible intruder report yesterday morning, she began. Yes, the officers found nothing. Right. But when I pulled the report, I noticed the responding officers noted you seemed particularly anxious. And your supervisor flagged that you'd reported a phantom call the night before. She looked up. I also noticed you were listed as Mark Brennan's emergency contact, the officer who died 2 years ago. My throat tightened. We were together. What does Mark have to do with this? Maybe nothing. But his case was never fully closed. There were irregularities. She hesitated. Ms. Blake, have you experienced any other unusual incidents recently? Anything that made you feel unsafe? I wanted to trust her. I wanted to tell her everything. But something held me back. Just the phantom call, I said carefully. Probably a glitch. She nodded slowly, like she didn't quite believe me. If anything else happens, call me directly. She handed me her card. Sometimes patterns emerge that aren't obvious at first. After she left, I returned to Mark's notebook. I booted up my old laptop, the personal one I used for backups, not the department-issued computer. I'd secretly kept copies of my dispatch logs, a habit Mark had taught me. Always have your own record, he'd said. Systems fail. People lie, data doesn't. I ran a recovery program on the backup drive, searching for deleted or corrupted files around the timestamp of my phantom call. It took 20 minutes. Then the program flagged something, a corrupted audio clip. I restored it, hands shaking as I pressed play. My own voice filled the room, distorted but unmistakable. Please, someone's inside my house, please. It cut off. I played it again. And again. I had never made that call. I had never said those words. But that was definitely my voice, logged at 11:52 p.m. the night before, during my shift, when I should have been at the dispatch center, not at home calling for help. Someone had recorded me, or fabricated my voice, or I didn't know. But I was terrified. Over the next few days, I tried to continue normally. Work my shifts. Come home. Ignore the creeping paranoia. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. On my drive home Thursday night, I noticed a silver SUV 3 cars behind me. When I turned onto my street, it followed. When I pulled into my parking spot, it idled 2 blocks down, lights on. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, watching my mirrors. The SUV didn't move. Finally, I made a run for my building, keys clutched between my fingers. Once inside, I locked every lock and shoved a chair under the door handle. That night, I received a voicemail. No caller ID. I listened to it on speaker, standing in the middle of my living room. Heavy breathing. Then, after 10 seconds, my own recorded greeting from work. 911, what's your emergency? The call ended. I didn't sleep at all that night. By Friday, I'd stopped trusting coincidence. I started mapping everything. Every phantom call report, every operator who'd mentioned database issues, every log gap I could find in the system. A pattern emerged. Every single phantom call correlated to specific dispatchers who'd recently logged formal complaints about database tampering or missing records. 5 dispatchers total, including me. I pulled their personnel files from the shared system. 3 of them had gone on sudden leave in the past month. Extended medical leave, the files said. None had returned. When I tried to access their full HR records, I hit a wall. Confidential. Authorized personnel only. That afternoon, I cornered Tom Jacobs in the parking lot during his smoke break. Tom, I need you to be straight with me. He exhaled smoke, not meeting my eyes. Aaron, I already told you. 3 dispatchers on sudden leave. Phantom calls. Missing logs. You know something. His cigarette trembled. You need to drop this. Why? What's happening to the system? He looked around the empty lot, then stepped closer, voice dropping to barely a whisper. The system's been compromised. Someone inside the department has been routing fake calls to mask illegal data wipes. I don't know who. I don't know why. But people who ask questions end up... He stopped himself. End up what? On medical leave? Dead? I have a family, Aaron. I can't... He dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. Mark found something. A flash drive with an encrypted backup. That's what they were looking for when they broke into his place. My blood went cold. How do you know that? Because he asked me to help him decrypt it 2 days before he died. I said no. I was too scared. Tom's voice cracked. That's why I can't help you now. I can't end up like him. He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot with the truth I'd been dreading. Mark hadn't died in a random break-in. He'd been murdered. I went home in a daze. A flash drive. Mark had hidden something worth killing for. I tore through my apartment. Where would he hide something he wanted me to find, but not them? My antique desk. Mark had always admired it, helped me move it twice. I knelt beside it, running my hands along the underside. My fingers found a loose panel. Inside was a USB drive wrapped in paper with 2 words in Mark's handwriting. For Aaron. My apartment went dark. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. Hello. You shouldn't have found that. The voice was calm, male, electronically distorted. You have 1 chance to walk away, put the drive back. Forget everything. Go back to your normal life. Who is this? Someone trying to save you from making Mark's mistake. The line died. I stood in the darkness, gripping the flash drive so hard the edges cut into my palm. Then I heard it. The sound of someone trying my back door handle. I ran to the bathroom, locked myself inside, and dialed 911 from my cell. But I couldn't give them my name. If someone in the system was listening, they'd know. 911, what's your emergency? It was Sarah, one of my co-workers. I disguised my voice, made it higher, frantic. Someone's trying to break into 2847 Riverside, apartment 4B. Please hurry. Ma'am, can you… I hung up. Waited in the dark bathroom, listening to my own heartbeat. Sirens arrived 7 minutes later. Footsteps. Voices pounding on my door. Police! Open up! I emerged shakily. 2 officers swept the apartment again. Again, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No intruder. You're Aaron Blake, Officer Daniels said, recognizing me from before. Second call this week. You doing okay? Someone was here, I insisted. He exchanged a look with his partner. Maybe you should talk to someone. Stress can… I know what I heard. After they left, I sat on my floor and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The contents made my stomach turn. Audio files, dozens of them. Recordings of 911 calls being rerouted, redirected, or deleted entirely. Metadata showing unauthorized access to the dispatch database. And names, city officials, police brass, people I recognized. The files were linked to something called Project Echo. I didn't understand what it meant, but Mark's notes were included. Private security firm using 911 infrastructure for surveillance and selective response times. Paid service for wealthy clients. Lives at stake in ignored districts. They were selling emergency services, manipulating who got help and who didn't. The next morning, Tom Jacobs didn't show up for work. I called his cell, straight to voicemail. I drove to his apartment during my break. The door was ajar. Inside, the place was empty. Not just unoccupied, cleared out. No furniture, no personal items, no sign anyone had ever lived there. Tom had been erased. I forwarded one of the encrypted audio files to Detective Laura Finch from a burner email account I'd set up. Within an hour, I checked the sent folder. The email was gone. Not in trash, not in sent items. Deleted remotely from both my account and presumably hers. Someone inside law enforcement had access to everything. They were watching. They knew every move I made. I was running out of options and running out of people I could trust. Monday morning, my access badge was rejected. Red light. Denied. Sharon appeared with a tight expression. Your credentials have been suspended pending security audit. HR's orders. For what? They didn't specify. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I was being shut out. At home, I found a burner phone on my doorstep. One message. You're not alone, keep recording. I decided to go public. I contacted Maya Torres, an investigative journalist who'd exposed corruption before. We met at a coffee shop far from my usual haunts. Maya was sharp, mid-30s, with skeptical eyes and a recorder she kept running on the table between us. I've heard whispers about dispatch irregularities, she said after I'd explained what I had. But whispers are all I've got. You're talking about conspiracy at the city level. I need hard proof. I have it. Audio files, metadata, names. Can you get me copies? I'll send them tonight from a secure location. We talked for another 20 minutes, mapping out how to break the story safely. She promised to verify sources independently, to build a case that couldn't be dismissed. As I drove home, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe I could expose them without… My house alarm shrieked as I pulled into my parking spot. The building's security alarm, the piercing wail echoing through the evening. I ran inside to find my door open, my apartment in disarray, and my phone buzzing with a call from my own dispatch center. 911 recorded a panic alarm from your address, the operator said. Units are en route. I didn't trigger any alarm. I just got home. Ma'am, the call came from your registered phone number 3 minutes ago. It was happening again. They were using my own systems against me. Police arrived. Again they searched. Again they found nothing out of place except the triggered alarm, which must have malfunctioned. Officer Daniels looked at me with something between concern and suspicion. Ms. Blake, This is the third incident. Maybe you should consider that stress from your job. I'm not imagining this. My voice rose, cracking with frustration. He backed off, hands raised. I'm just saying, there are resources available. Counseling, medical leave. After they left, I broke down. I sat on my floor and cried, the weight of it all crushing me. The system I'd dedicated my life to, the institution I'd trusted, was now being weaponized against me. Every tool meant to protect people was being turned into a weapon. The next day, Detective Laura Finch showed up at my door with a folder in hand. She looked uncomfortable. I wasn't supposed to show you this, she said quietly, stepping inside. But I think you deserve to know what you're up against. She spread papers across my coffee table, printouts of erased 911 reports, each one marked with coded notations I didn't understand. Then she laid down one more sheet, a 911 call log from 2 years ago. The date Mark died, a call placed from his address at 11:43 p.m., a full hour before the police said the break-in occurred. The call was logged but marked, "Canceled, no response required." Someone got that call and didn't send help, Laura said softly. Someone let him die. My hands shook as I picked up the paper. Why are you showing me this? Because I was told to drop the case. Officially, there's no investigation. But unofficially, she met my eyes. I believe you, and I think you're in serious danger. Before I could respond, an envelope was slid under my door. Laura pulled her gun, moving to check the hallway. Empty. Inside the envelope was a formal letter on city letterhead. Notice of suspension. Effective immediately. Reason: mental instability and suspected system tampering. Someone was planting evidence against me, building a case to discredit everything I might say. They're framing you, Laura said, reading over my shoulder. I need to hide the flash drive somewhere safe, somewhere they won't think to look. Where? I thought of Mark's old locker at the precinct. He'd been a cop long enough to earn a permanent space. After he died, I'd kept paying the rental fee through some bureaucratic oversight. They might have forgotten it existed. The precinct, I said. Mark's old locker. It's still registered to him. Laura hesitated. That's risky. It's the heart of their territory. Which makes it the last place they'd expect. That night, Laura got me into the precinct using her credentials. We moved quickly through the old locker room in the basement, rarely used since they'd built the new facility upstairs. Mark's locker was in the back corner, number 47, his badge number. I opened it with the key I'd kept on my keychain for 2 years, unable to let go. Inside were his old uniforms, a spare radio, scattered papers. I tucked the flash drive into the lining of his Kevlar vest and closed the locker. This better work, Laura muttered. We left separately. I went home, feeling like I'd at least bought some time. But when I got there, Maya Torres called the burner phone. Aaron, they found me. Her voice was trembling. They know I'm working on this. My apartment's been... Someone broke in. My laptop's gone. All my research. Maya, get somewhere public. Somewhere safe. I'm trying, but... Her voice broke. I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. The line cut out. I tried calling her back. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. 2 hours later, police scanners mentioned an unidentified female victim found unconscious in her car. No name given yet. But deep in my guts, I knew. Maya was gone. They'd gotten to her. Just like they'd gotten to Tom. Just like they'd tried to erase Mark. I grabbed my go bag, what little cash I had, and the burner phone. I couldn't stay. Not anymore. As I reached for my keys, the burner buzzed with a new message. A screenshot. Access logs showing Detective Laura Finch viewing my home security feed remotely. On the night of my first break-in. My blood ran cold. Laura had been watching me this whole time. She'd played both sides, gaining my trust while feeding information back to them. Everyone I'd trusted was either dead, disappeared, or working against me. I was truly alone now, with nowhere left to run. I drove to Maya's apartment, hands shaking on the wheel, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. When I arrived, the door was ajar, barely hanging on one hinge. Inside, the darkness was oppressive. I flipped the light switch. Nothing. I used my phone's flashlight to survey the damage. A coffee mug lay shattered on the floor, brown liquid soaked into the carpet. Her laptop was gone, obviously, but so was her external hard drive, her phone charger, even her notes. Everything wiped clean. But it was the smell that made my stomach turn. Bleach. Strong, chemical, the kind used to eliminate DNA evidence. They hadn't just robbed her. They'd sanitized the crime scene. My phone buzzed. Police scanner app. Unidentified female victim, unconscious, possible overdose, Jefferson and 5th. That was 3 blocks from here. My legs nearly gave out. Maya. They'd gotten to Maya. I stumbled back to my car, barely able to see through tears. Back at my apartment, paranoia consumed me. I needed to check if the files were safe, if my backups were intact. I plugged in my backup drive with trembling fingers. The folders opened normally at first. Then, as I watched in horror, files began disappearing. Corruption spreading like a virus. Someone was inside my system, not just monitoring, but actively destroying evidence in real time. I yanked the USB cord so hard it snapped. Then I grabbed the modem and smashed it against the floor. Once, twice, 3 times until plastic shattered and circuitry spilled out like mechanical guts. I needed help desperately. Someone outside the corrupted system. Someone who understood what I was facing. Ray Alvarez. The name surfaced from memory like a lifeline. A retired dispatch technician who'd trained me 6 years ago when I first started. He'd been brilliant, meticulous, the kind of person who noticed every detail. Then one day he'd quit without explanation, disappeared completely. At the time, I'd assumed burnout. Now I wondered if he'd known something. I found his number buried in old contacts and called from the burner phone, praying it still worked. Aaron? His voice was cautious, suspicious even. How'd you get this number? Ray, I need help. The 911 system, it's compromised. People are dying and they're coming after me because I found proof. Jesus Christ. A long pause. Don't say anything else on this line. Where are you? We met at a gas station 40 minutes outside city limits, far from cameras and witnesses. Ray looked older than I remembered. Hair grayer, face lined with worry. But his eyes were still sharp, still observant. He led me to his camper parked in a wooded area off the main road. Inside, it was cramped but organized, filled with old computer equipment and stacks of external drives. I quit 5 years ago because I discovered call data tampering, he said, immediately booting up an offline laptop that wasn't connected to any network. Calls being rerouted, response times manipulated, logs altered. When I reported it through proper channels, nothing happened. Then I started getting death threats, anonymous messages telling me to forget what I'd seen. So I did what any rational person would do. I disappeared. But you kept records, I said, seeing the determination in his eyes. Mark's data specifically. Your boyfriend was smart, Aaron. He knew they'd come for his evidence eventually, so he mirrored the entire 911 server database and sent me an encrypted backup 3 days before he died. I've been sitting on it ever since. Too scared to act. Too guilty to destroy it. He pulled up files, screens full of code and audio recordings. But if you're ready to fight this, I'll help. I owe Mark that much. I owe you that much. The files revealed everything, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Project Echo, a private security firm that had somehow secured municipal contracts to optimize emergency response efficiency. What that really meant was turning 911 into a tiered service. Wealthy neighborhoods paid premium rates through their HOAs and community associations for priority dispatch. Their calls got answered first, units arrived faster, better equipment was allocated. Meanwhile, poor districts were deliberately deprioritized. Their calls were rerouted through additional verification steps, marked as low urgency by default, or sometimes delayed until higher-paying areas were served first. Ray showed me the death toll. An elderly woman in the project suffering a heart attack. Her call delayed 43 minutes while units were diverted to a false alarm at a suburban mansion. She died before help arrived. A 10-year-old boy shot in gang crossfire. Ambulance took 37 minutes because resources were allocated to a minor fender bender in a wealthy district. He bled out in his mother's arms. There were dozens of cases. Maybe hundreds. People had died not because of insufficient resources, but because someone had decided their lives weren't worth as much as people who could pay. I felt sick, physically ill. This was the system I'd dedicated my life to, the institution I'd believed in, and it had been corrupted into a pay-to-survive scheme. "We need to get this to media," I said, voice shaking with rage. "I tried." Ray's expression was grim. "Contacted 3 different journalists over the past 2 years. 2 emails bounced, accounts deleted or blocked. The 3rd replied within minutes. 'We know about you. Stop.' They control traditional media channels, Aaron. They've got people everywhere." I contacted another journalist anonymously. Same result. They'd locked down traditional media. "Then we broadcast it ourselves," I said. "Live stream it where they can't stop it." Ray nodded slowly. "There's an abandoned news station on Route 9, old analog equipment. Unhackable if we do it right." We spent hours planning. But as we prepared to leave, Ray checked under his van and found a tracking device. "They know where we are," he whispered. We split up. I took the laptop with the backup files. Ray would create a diversion, lead them away while I got to the broadcast station. I was driving a back road when the silver SUV appeared in my mirror. It accelerated, ramming my bumper. I swerved, fought for control. The SUV hit me again, harder. My car skidded off the road into a ditch. I scrambled out, bruised but mobile, and ran into the woods. Behind me, I heard car doors slam, voices shouting. I recorded the SUV's license plate with my phone camera before disappearing into the trees. Hours later, hiding in an abandoned barn, Ray texted me an image. Badge records showing Detective Laura Finch had accessed my home security feed the night of my first break-in. She'd been watching from the beginning. Then another message. "They arrested me, charged with cybercrime. Everything's pinned on me now. Get the data out, Aaron, finish this." My hands trembled. Ray was in custody because of me. I pulled up the voicemail from Maya one last time, listening carefully. In the background, barely audible, I heard Laura's voice. "Delete everything." Laura had been there when they took Maya. She'd been part of it all along. I confronted Laura the next morning before dawn in the station parking lot, approaching her car silently before she even noticed I was there. When she looked up and saw me standing by her window, she went pale. "I know what you did," I said, my voice cold and controlled despite the fury burning inside me. She froze for a long moment, hand still on her keys. Then she slowly stepped out of the car, hands visible, movements careful. "Aaron, you don't understand the situation." "I understand perfectly. You've been feeding them information this entire time. You accessed my home security system the night of my break-in. You were there when they took Maya. I heard your voice on her recording telling them to delete everything. You've been playing both sides. Listen to me carefully." Her voice was urgent, almost desperate. "I am under cover. Deep cover. I've been investigating Project Echo from inside the department for 8 months. That audio you heard, yes, I was telling them to delete evidence, but what you didn't hear was me simultaneously backing it up to secure servers. I've been documenting everything, building an airtight case. Prove it. She reached slowly into her jacket, pulled out a small recording device. I've been wearing a wire for months. Every meeting, every conversation, it's all here. But I need your help. We have to retrieve that flash drive from Mark's locker before they realize it exists. Together, with both our evidence, we can bring down the entire operation. I stared at her, trying to read the truth in her expression. Every instinct screamed not to trust her. But I needed that drive back. If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trap, then you can expose me along with everyone else, she interrupted. But Aaron, we're running out of time. They're eliminating loose ends. Ray's arrest is just the beginning. Late that night, Laura got us into the precinct through a side entrance. We moved quickly to the old locker room. I opened Mark's locker with shaking hands. Empty. Where the flash drive should have been was a sealed evidence bag marked, "Do not open." Inside were staged photos, screenshots making it look like I'd planted malware in dispatch computers. A printed statement forged with my signature confessing to system tampering. "They're framing you," Laura breathed, "making you the scapegoat." As we left, I hid behind a vending machine as 2 officers passed, discussing making it look like a psych break. I recorded everything on Laura's device. The next day, news broke. Ray Alvarez wanted for cybercrime. My bank account froze. My car was towed. My badge permanently revoked. I was a fugitive now, hunted by my own department. The only person left I could possibly trust was Nina Patel, a young IT intern I'd once helped get hired when her application had been rejected twice for lack of experience. I'd vouched for her, convinced them she had potential. She was brilliant, meticulous, and most importantly, she'd mentioned once, casually, that she never quite trusted how opaque the 911 system's backend was. I reached her through a coded message in an obscure online forum we'd joked about using if the department's systems ever went completely down. Within hours, she responded with coordinates to a public library in a neighboring town. We met in the reference section, surrounded by dusty law books nobody ever read. Nina looked terrified but determined, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled a thumb drive from her pocket. "Oh, I saw strange access logs about 6 weeks ago," she whispered, constantly glancing around. "Database queries that made no sense, pulling residential income data, cross-referencing with response times, running algorithms on dispatch priorities. I copied everything to this drive before I realized how dangerous it was." She slid it across the table like it was radioactive. I've been too scared to even look at what's on it since then. But when I saw the news about you being wanted, about Ray's arrest, I knew you were fighting something real. "Nina, if they find out you helped me, I know the risks." Her jaw set with surprising firmness. "But I didn't get into IT to help people game the system. I got into it to make sure systems work for everyone fairly." Together, we spent 3 hours in a private study room, decrypting and analyzing the files. The logs proved everything. Project Echo's algorithms systematically rerouted emergency calls away from poor districts to prioritize wealthy neighborhoods paying premium subscription fees through shell companies disguised as community safety initiatives. The data was damning. Response time differentials, mortality rate increases in low-income areas, email chains discussing acceptable casualty rates, and revenue optimization through selective service allocation. Nina's face grew pale as we scrolled through the evidence. "They used 911 as a business," she said, voice hollow with shock. "They literally decided who lived and who died based on zip codes and income brackets. And we're going to make them answer their own call," I replied. The abandoned news station on Route 9 was a relic from another era. Analog equipment, physical switches, technology so old, it predated modern hacking techniques. That's exactly why we chose it. Nina and I spent 2 full days preparing. We mapped power sources, tested the transmission equipment, created redundant backups on multiple platforms, prepared to simultaneously broadcast to streaming services, social media, and even old-school television frequencies that some rural areas still monitored. Once we start this broadcast, they'll mobilize everything to stop us, Nina said as she soldered connections on the primary transmitter. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. SWAT teams, probably. Maybe worse. I know. I set up the camera, checking angles and lighting. But if we don't do this, more people die. More families lose someone because their zip code wasn't profitable enough. My burner phone rang. Laura's number. The station is already under surveillance, she said without preamble. I'm monitoring their channels. They've had units watching for the past 12 hours. Whatever you're planning, they know. Then why haven't they moved in? Because they're waiting to see who else shows up. They want everyone involved. Aaron, I can get you out now before this goes any further. I'm not running anymore, I said firmly. We're broadcasting tonight. Then let me help. Give me 2 hours to position myself where I can cover your exit. Laura, if you're really on our side, then make sure Ray gets out alive. They're keeping him as leverage. I paused. I'm including his location in the broadcast. Someone will get to him. She was quiet for a moment. Send me the coordinates. I'll go myself. We powered up the transmitter at exactly midnight. Nina started the upload sequence while I positioned myself in front of the camera, holding up the first document. An email chain discussing revenue per prevented death and acceptable response delay thresholds. My name is Aaron Blake, I said directly to the camera, my voice carrying the weight of everything I'd lost. I'm a 911 operator. For 6 years, I believed I was helping save lives. Then I discovered that the system I trusted had been turned into a business. Project Echo, a private company contracted by city officials, has been manipulating emergency responses based on who can pay premium rates. People have died. Children, elderly, sick people who needed help. They died not because help wasn't available, but because they lived in the wrong neighborhoods. I held up document after document. Audio files played, 911 calls being rerouted, dispatchers being told to delay responses, executives celebrating revenue increases. Sirens approached within 7 minutes, faster than I'd expected. Keep it running, I shouted to Nina as tactical lights flooded the building exterior. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. The doors burst open. 10 officers, full tactical gear, weapons drawn. Leading them was Chief Morrison himself. His face was red with fury, veins bulging in his neck. Turn that transmission off right now. It's already out there, I said, checking the upload counter. 67%. Thousands of people are watching live. Laura entered moments later, gun drawn. For one terrible heartbeat, I thought she'd betrayed us after all. Then she aimed her weapon at Morrison instead. This is over, sir. Her voice was cold, professional, the voice of a cop doing her duty. I've been recording everything for 8 months as part of an internal affairs investigation. The district attorney has copies of all my evidence as of 1 hour ago. You're done. Morrison moved fast for a man his size. He lunged for the transmitter, trying to rip cables loose. Laura fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down, but the upload counter showed 83% complete. The files were already spreading across the internet, copied and reshared faster than they could be suppressed. Nina grabbed the thumb drive and ran, disappearing through a back exit before anyone could stop her. Morrison grabbed me, slamming me against the wall. You destroyed everything. Years of work, billions in contracts. You mean your monopoly on help, I said, voice shaking but clear. You decided who deserved to live based on who could pay. More officers arrived, but this time federal agents. They separated Morrison from me, handcuffs clicking. Aaron Blake, one agent asked. We've been investigating Project Echo for 6 months. Your broadcast just gave us everything we needed. I collapsed outside the building, watching police cars swarm their own headquarters. Through my phone screen, I saw the files trending nationally. Project Echo, 911 corruption. Blake whistleblower. Someone had finally answered the call. 3 weeks later, the fallout was still spreading. Multiple city officials indicted. The entire Emergency Operations Board suspended pending federal review. Project Echo's corporate officers arrested. I visited Ray in the hospital. They'd found him at the coordinates I'd broadcast, alive but badly beaten. You finished what Mark started, he said, gripping my hand. We finished it. Together. Maya's name resurfaced in the leaked files, her unpublished article found among the documents. I arranged with her editor to have it printed posthumously, under both our bylines. She deserved to be remembered not as a victim, but as a journalist who'd tried to expose the truth. The department offered to reinstate me with full honors and back pay. I stood in the director's office, looking at the badge on the desk between us. No, I said simply. I can't listen to people scream for help in a system I don't trust anymore. We're rebuilding from the ground up. We need people like you. You need accountability. Transparency, that's what I'll work on, but not from inside. Nina joined a cybersecurity watchdog group, using the Project Echo leak as their foundation case. They asked me to be an advisor. I accepted. Laura resigned from the force, choosing to testify publicly despite threats. We met for coffee one afternoon. I lied to survive, she admitted, but you fought to change it. That took more courage. You could have walked away. You didn't. Neither did you. We weren't friends exactly, but we understood each other. I returned to my apartment. New locks, new cat. I'd found whiskers at a neighbor's. Same phone number. I sat by the window in silence as city sirens echoed faintly outside. The sounds used to comfort me, remind me I was part of something important. Now they just reminded me how broken the system had been. I pressed play on Mark's old voice memo, the one I'd found on the flash drive. If anything happens to me, finish the call. Don't let them bury the truth with my body. Aaron, you're stronger than you know. Trust yourself. Tears filled my eyes. I did, I whispered. I finished it, Mark. 6 months later, I stood in the state capitol as the governor signed emergency reform legislation. The Blake Act, mandating transparency in dispatch systems, independent oversight, equal resource allocation regardless of neighborhood income. Reporters asked for comments. I kept it brief. Emergency services aren't a commodity. They're a right. No one should have to pay extra to be saved. That night, walking to my car in the Capitol parking lot, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My hand froze on the screen. For a moment, the old fear returned. The paranoia, the sense of being watched. Then I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. I smiled faintly and let it go to voicemail. Whatever ghosts remained, they'd have to find someone else to haunt. I was done being afraid. I drove home through the city, past the neighborhoods where Project Echo had decided who lived and who died, past the dispatch center where I'd spent 6 years believing I was helping people. The building looked different now. Smaller, less imposing. Just a building. At home, I found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a flash drive with a note. For the next fight. N. Nina. Always prepared. I smiled and tucked it in my desk drawer. Not hidden, just safe. Because I knew now that there would always be another fight. Another system that needed exposing. Another truth buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and corruption. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight I made tea, sat on my couch with my new cat purring beside me, and watched the late news. They were still talking about Project Echo, about the reforms, about the lives saved because someone had finally asked the right questions. My phone stayed silent on the coffee table, and for the first time in 2 years, I slept through the night without nightmares. I dreamed of Mark instead, not the way he died, but the way he lived. Curious, relentless, convinced that truth mattered even when it was dangerous to pursue it. In the dream, he smiled at me and said, "You did good, Aaron. You did good." When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through my windows. A new day, a new chance to get it right. I made coffee, checked the news. More Project Echo arrests, the investigation was spreading to other cities, and answered emails from the watchdog group about testimony I was scheduled to give next week. Then I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a report or a statement. A story. My story. Everything that had happened from that first impossible call to this moment. Because Mark had been right about one thing. Every call tells you something the surface doesn't. And this was a call that needed to be heard. 3 hours later, I hit send, emailing the manuscript to a publisher Nina had connected me with. The subject line: "I'm a 911 operator. Last night I got a call from my own number. I live alone." My story. Our story. A warning and a testament. The phone rang. This time a number I recognized. The watchdog group. "Aaron, we just got word that 2 more cities are launching investigations based on your testimony. They think Project Echo had franchises." I closed my eyes, took a breath. "How can I help?" "Same thing you've been doing. Tell the truth. Don't stop." "I won't," I promised, and I meant it. Because I'd learned something important in the darkness of those terrifying weeks. Silence protects the guilty. Truth protects the innocent. And sometimes the scariest thing you can do is answer the call that everyone else is afraid to take. I'd answered mine, and I'd survived. More than survived, I'd won. Not just for me, or Mark, or Maya, or Ray, but for every person who'd ever dialed 911 and prayed someone would care enough to help. Every person who'd been ignored, deprioritized, erased. Their calls mattered. Their lives mattered. And now, finally, someone was listening. I walked out into the afternoon sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. My car was parked on the street. My cat was fed. My rent was paid with money from the book advance. I was free. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a woman's voice, shaking and desperate. "Please, I need help. No one's coming. They said my neighborhood isn't priority." "Give me your address," I said, already pulling up Nina's emergency contact list. "We'll get someone to you. I promise." Because Project Echo was dead. But the people who needed help were still out there. And this time, someone was going to answer. "Thank you," the woman sobbed. "Thank you so much." I stayed on the line with her until I confirmed help was coming. When I hung up, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't a 911 operator anymore. I was something different now. Something better. I was someone who'd looked into the darkness and decided to turn on the light. And that made all the difference. If this story made you think twice about the systems we take for granted, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about ordinary people who refused to stay silent when it mattered most.